So great greetings to all who have gathered here, the fantastic minds here with us at the Next Step 360. Well, let me begin like this. So if a genie granted me a wish, I would certainly ask him to give me the ability to learn how to learn. Well, we as students acquire most of our skills through learning. Well, so the most prominent question that resonates in the minds of young undergraduates is that how do we learn to learn? Learning in the sense to acquire the academic skills, to climb up the ladder of academia, to have academic excellence. Well, undoubtedly, the answer would lie in the minds of brilliant personalities who have climbed up the ladder of academia. Well, here we are, the Next Step 360, bringing those minds into talk. Well, nice evening, everyone, again. So, 360 Next Step is a program that helps undergraduates to climb, to become good personalities as well as pursue good careers in their field, wherever they work. So, as you all know, this comprises of three arenas, and academia or the academic forum, academic sessions are one of them. So we are at one of the academic sessions. At this session, we have intended to focus on the issues on postgraduate studies and then to bring about sustainable and effective solutions through our panel of experts we have. Well, so without much ado, without any delay, let's move on to the panel of experts. Let me introduce our panel of experts as such. We have Dr. Buddhima Subasinghe. I hope many of you know about her. Well, she is a graduate of with a PhD from the University of Peradeniya in the fields of cybersecurity and computer science at the age of 24, making her the youngest PhD holder in South Asia. Well, and she is also awarded the youngest chartered professional fellow manager at CIPM Awards 2019. Currently, she's the head of the computer science and the National Institute of Business Management. She also serves as the task force member for policy formulation for the new education reforms of Ministry of Education. And we have Dr. Asanka Bulathwatta. He's a renowned scholar and a senior lecturer in the Department of Psychology, University of Peradeniya, Faculty of Arts. Well, he has obtained his degree of bachelor's degree of arts in psychology with a first class honors from the University of Peradeniya. With many degrees in hand, he completed the doctorate of philosophy in educational and rehabilitation psychology from the University of Leipzig, Germany. And also we have Ms. Minoli Wijethunga. She is a researcher affiliated to the Digital Humanities Lab in the University of Colombo. She's a member of the Global Shapers community affiliated to the Global Economic Forum and in international and comparative education. And she's now reading for her master's education in international and comparative education at the University of Oxford as a Chevening scholar. She has also worked in designing and development in continuous education. Minoli is also published in national and international journals. Her research interests are as such education, gender, and digital humanities. Well, so that's our panel today. So they'll be sharing the insights with you in order to guide you through this voyage of academia, in order to become well-established citizens, well-established personalities who can bring about to change to the world, okay, who has success in all arena with capabilities, talents, and skills to confront the demands of the modern changing world. Well, to start the session, let me move on to Dr. Buddhima. Hello, Dr. Buddhima Subasinghe. Well, let me direct my first question to her. Madam, we know that everybody have understood that there is a gap between education and employment. Well, and then when you go into the industry, you understand that what is expected from you is sometimes different to what you have learned in the university as an academic, as an undergraduate. So, well, most of people confront with more issues, problems in bridging this gap. So, Dr. Buddhima, I would like to know what is the reason for this gap, and how do we bridge this gap effectively as an undergraduate?
Well, that's a very interesting question to start with. Sahita, thank you very much for posting that wonderful question. Speaking of education, I think you highlighted about learning, relearning, and unlearning when you started off the session. I think that's a very good start for Next Step 360 today for to actually give our undergraduates an initiation, an idea as to how important it is to unlearn and relearn. Because the world is changing, the world is fast moving, and it's up to us to take this challenge and move forward along with the changing world. So answering to your question about this gap that's created, and when we speak of education, I would say education, all of us, we accept the fact that it is the most powerful weapon that can be used to change the world. That's exactly what the great people have done, and we are following suit. However, one aspect that I see in students is that this word education is not taken in its right form. Education, Sahita, is a facilitation of learning. It's the acquisition of language, skills, values, habits that help you transform yourself to become a visionary leader, a leader with a vision, a leader with a goal, a leader with an aim to achieve something in life. But the question is, on the other hand, when we speak of most of the undergraduates, we don't see this vision that's coming out of them. That's one reason why this gap is being created, is what I personally feel. Of course, we can debate and we can come up with more ideas in the discussion to come. However, now, how are we going to bridge this gap of education? One thing, one notion we have is it's only the book knowledge that we require to succeed in life. So what do? Ever since we went to school, we've been learning. We've been through this process of learning. And what did we do? We were looking at somebody, an elder who has been doing something. We've been following suit. We've been following that person. And that was probably our parents, our teachers, the elders who are around us. And what do when we go to school? In most cases, we cram, we memorize, and then we did our exams. And then when we come to university, what do? Still, we fall into the same category of spoon feeding. We want the lecturers to spoon feed us. We cram. Sometimes during the last 2 weeks of our examination, we go to this kuppy and we get some of the seniors to support us, and we pass the exam. Right? This happens, whether we like it or not. I'd like to clearly state this happens in most of the cases. Now, Sahita, when we speak of the kids in Sri Lanka, 300,000 students sit for advanced level examination in Sri Lanka, out of which 200,000 is only who would pass this examination. And only 30,000 to 40,000 students get the opportunity, get this brilliant, precious opportunity to get into a national university. Out of those 200,000 students who just pass. Now, this passing means maybe 4 A's, maybe 2 A's and a B, or maybe 3 S's, right? And out of which 30 to 40,000 get the acceptance to a national university. What happens to the rest? The rest would end up in a semi-government university, a private university, or they would just stay at home. Right, so this is the way the youth's life is formulated in Sri Lanka. So when we consider this background, we see, on the other hand, that there is a 20.83% unemployment rate when it comes to the youth unemployment rate of Sri Lanka. But Sahita, if you look back to see 2018 and 2019, it was 20 point something. It was 20.1, it was 20.23%, 21 point. So 21.23% in 2019, and when it comes to 2020, it's 20.83%. Why is the youth unemployment rate reducing? Now, why is this happening? Now, are we going to be the people who are going to still carry these boards and walk up on the roads and complain to the government stating, look here, we don't have jobs? Or are we going to find a solution here? Let me tell you the solution. I see three clear gaps when it comes to what's expected out there in the industry and what our students, our undergraduates really work around. Like I told you, this cramming, this memorizing, and sitting for the exams and trying to just pass the exam with the help of a copy is definitely, my dear friends, not going to work when it comes to industry. What the person, for you to become a tech-driven person, for you to become an insight-driven person. Now, why would I say this? The World Economic Forum clearly states a couple of weeks back that by 2025 and beyond. Now we are almost in 2021. So 4 years down the line, 50% of the employment rate of the world will have to become reskilled. Otherwise, they would lose their jobs. All right. 50% of the people out there in the world will have to be reskilled. I'm repeating. Otherwise, we would lose our jobs. You, me, all of us, my dear friends. So we have to be ready to face this in the next 4 years. I'm not making you scared, but I'm speaking the truth. It's always important for us to realize and understand what's happening out there in the world. And we being in this tiny Sri Lanka yet have to be prepared with this changing world, as Sahita mentioned even at the very beginning. So speaking of the top 10 skills by the end of 2025 that you require in terms of being skill driven, I'd like to point out a few skills that the World Economic Forum requires for us to actually have in us are analytical thinking, innovation skills, active learning strategies, and complex problem solving skills, critical thinking and analysis skills, with creativity, originality, initiativeness that you need to have, leadership and influence. Like I told you, education is not just about book knowledge, but it's this facilitation of learning for you to acquire skills, habits, values, all that to become a visionary leader, a leader with a vision. Of course, ever since the day we were born, we've been leaders. Why? Because you and me, both of us, we've been leading our lives, right? But the question is, are we leading our lives with a vision, with a goal, with a target? Now, do not wait till you go to an interview to be asked this question in the next 5 years, where do you want to be? Ask that question from yourself. In the next 5 years, where am I going to be? The World Economic Forum states after 2025, you need to be reskilled. You need to be multi-skilled. If so, what are the skills that lie inside me for me to become that unshakable person, be it a pandemic, be it a natural disaster, yet I should be able to move forward with my career. If that's the case, what are the skills that I require to inculcate within me? So these are few skills that I told you. Technology use, technology monitoring and controlling skills, my dear students. Now, when I speak of technology, let me move to being tech-driven. Right? I told you, you need to inculcate the skills, become skill-driven person, skills in terms of communication skills, skills in terms of attitudes, leadership skills. These are paramount. Sometimes, Sahita, people say, people call this as soft skills, but I would call it as essential skills. Because if these skills are not there in us, unfortunately, we wouldn't be accepted to the job, my dear students. Now, one thing we see is sometimes we come from the best universities, but when we face the interview, it's a simple question. Introduce yourself to us and tell us something about yourself. Unfortunately, we are not able to speak up sometimes at the interview. Why? Now, why is that? It's us. I know best about me more than anybody else. So I need to have that confidence to speak up and talk about myself. If I don't speak about myself, how on earth is somebody else going to speak about myself? So I'd like to tell you, if you do not write your story, if you do not own that pen to write your story, somebody who is sitting next to you will grab that pen and write the story for you. So do not let that happen. Do not let somebody else drive your life. Have confidence, have self-belief that you are best in what you do. And you need to be the best in what you do as well. To prove yourself, you need to have those credentials with you when you go for an interview. All right, so coming back to the skills, resilience skills, stress tolerance, flexibility. So these are some of the leadership skills that we require when we get into industry, which when we do not have, we come across conflicts. Now, when we come across conflicts, especially in the internship period or maybe during the probationary period, unfortunately, we do not get permanent in our job. And then we have this question, I've only got my internship, I've not got a permanent job, and I start holding boats on the road. Now, that's not the solution, my dear students. The solution lies within us. We need to change. Number one, skill-driven. Number two, tech-driven. Whether we like it or not, the world is transforming into a digitalized world. The smart world is out there waiting for us to embrace. So whether we like it or not, we Sri Lankans, we have to embrace it in the future. Keels, Kargils, all these places will eventually move to become a digitalized place for us to buy our things. And at the same time, we wouldn't go to a bank and stay at a queue to probably withdraw our cash or maybe to deposit cash or transfer cash somewhere else. I think at the moment also some of us are using online mobile transfer, mobile payment mechanisms, but most of the Sri Lankans do not, because we fear. Because we do not know technology. We do not want to embrace technology, but whether we like it or not, in the future, we will have to. Now, during COVID, we learned a lot of lessons. We learned that we can't be with people. We learned that we have to embrace technology, whether we like it or not. Now, what happened during COVID? In 2020, why have the employment rate reduced in Sri Lanka? Because with the change that the world was embracing, Sri Lanka was not able to embrace that change in that same way. There is a majority of the students out there in the universities who can't get internship opportunities, either because they do not own a laptop or maybe they do not know how to use a laptop, especially when it comes to students of different other faculties. My dear students, let me tell you, you could be the best chartered accountant out there in the world. But if you are not a master in Excel, you would lose your job in the future. Whether we like it or not, that's the future, and we have to embrace it. So to do that, become tech-driven. You have to embrace technology. And number three, insight-driven. Now, in the university, in our second year, in our fourth year, we've been going through research, right? We have a final year research project. And yes, sometimes some of us, we do it for the sake of doing, yeah? Sometimes some of us do it with the support of another person. We say, no, you see, we try to see the light at the end of the tunnel just from the support of another person. We try to somehow creep in through the final year research. But my dear students, when you get out there in the industry, be it any tech company, be it any financial company, be it any bank, be it any insurance company, you will have to engage in research. You will have to do research to come up with new modules. Whatever the field you are in, whatever the management position you are going to embrace, you will have to look at the future and be a forward-thinking leader. So to do that, you need to gain the best skills in the university in terms of gaining insights through what we do. Simply, this is all about research. But what do we do at university? Sometimes we take this research, final year research also, for granted. But there is this one segment of students who do it for their best, who do it at their best, right? They go and even do an international publication with their research, and they proudly talk about it when they get into their interview to say, look here, I did this research, we did it as a team, and we've published it in this international journal or in this international conference, and this is the feedback we got, and we are still working on it. We're planning to go ahead with an entrepreneurship idea to plant the seed and start with an incubator probably. So this is what some of the students talk about when they get into industry. So what happens? Immediately they would get that job opportunity. Immediately they would grab that job opportunity. So my dear students, these three skills are of paramount importance. Be skill driven, be tech driven, and also be insight driven. Skill driven in terms of communication is key, is crucial. If you do not communicate, simply, if I tell you, one thing that especially IT industry looks at is, if you can't express yourself to the interview panel, how are you going to talk to the customer and get the requirements the customer requires? Is that even possible, is what we see when you get into an interview, right? So this is why we lose jobs. Now, do you know that there are 200,000 plus jobs in the IT sector in Sri Lanka, but we don't have the labor force to fill it? Especially when I speak of the data scientists, we have 2 to 3 data scientists working in Sri Lanka who are paid in dollars, my dear students. 1 month's salary will be close to 10 lakhs of Sri Lankan rupees for a data scientist. But do we have expertise in Sri Lanka? Unfortunately, no. So we have to hire from India. Right. So this is the problem we are facing. So at one point, we broadly think that we have all the skills we require when we cram and somehow do our university subjects and we graduate. But the industry expectation is different because they require those 3 areas of being a skill-driven person, a tech-driven person, and an insight-driven person. So let us work together and not carry boards on the road, but try to reduce the youth unemployment rate in Sri Lanka. If you all can work together to embrace technology and move forward to grab those leadership opportunities. Back to you, Sahita.
Well, that was so exciting. And then, as you said, one sees one's own creator, one sees one's own master. Well, being a symbolic icon in academia, not only nationally, but in the whole South Asia, being the youngest PhD holder. That was so insightful, Madam, bringing out your insights to this visionary people, undergraduates who are going to be the leaders of change. And you emphasize on the fact of the changing world. As you said, we are edge of the space age. We will ultimately enter, and then starships are being propelled from their propellers these days. Well, we are trying to move on a to make a transition in the bank account. Well, that was so insightful. I think all who have gathered here, all who want to embrace the skills, talents, and abilities to become a leader of change. That was so exciting. So that was a brilliant start to start our voyage of expertise. Well, so let me move on to Miss Minoli. She would like calling me Minoli. Well, so as you have met, Miss Minoli. So well, after the bachelor's degree, most of our graduates, let me call undergraduates, confront with a dilemma. Well, we can call it a moral dilemma, whether to stay in their field of academia or else deviate or make a transition to a job. Well, so this is a very decisive and a crucial event in their lives, because it will be decisive in their career as well as the whole life. Their future would change upon this decision. Well, I would like to know, right? I would like to know, how do we take this decision? How do we take the decision? What are the factors to be considered? Whether to stay in the field of academics or to move on to do a transition to a job career.
Okay, thanks, Sahith, and it's Minoli, no miss. Okay, that's a really interesting and I guess in a way like a timely question. So now we say that master's is the next bachelor's because we have what we call a credentials inflation. There are a lot of people coming out of universities with a bachelor's degree, which means that if you want to be extremely competitive in a market, you have to have something a little more. Having said that, though, you shouldn't be, in my personal opinion, you shouldn't proceed to a postgraduate program simply because you feel like, oh, I'm not really passionate about this, but you know what? I don't know what else to do. So I should just like keep on studying, keep on learning, which is something that we often do because, hey, I don't know what to do. I thought I'll just like do my postgrads, you know, like nikang neke, might as well do something. That is not really the best way forward, primarily because your postgrad studies are going to be extremely different from your undergrad studies. So if you actually walk in there thinking, oh, it's just for like, you know, it's just like something to pass time for me, it's going to be really difficult. But more importantly, whether you want to immediately move into like higher studies or go into the job market, and I don't necessarily believe they are like separate boxes. I don't believe they're separate in like things to do. They're usually interlinked, especially depending on your field. Now, there are some fields, for example, mine, and like a lot of like education or like people related areas, doing a very hands-on job will actually help you in your higher studies. But then there are other fields, say if you are like a literature major, if you are going to do very much in like literary, archaeology, things like that, then perhaps a straight on higher studies might help you. So there's that distinction to make. Why do you want to do it? Do you want to do it because all my friends are doing it, might as well do it? Do you want to do it because I don't really have a job, so I might do it? Or basically your intention matters a lot. Having said that, I know this question, I think you might be addressing it later on, but now with COVID, a lot of people, especially in international universities, when we're discussing, like say even for where I am right now, when we talk about intake for the next couple of years, it's going to be extremely competitive. A lot of students are going to move into academia, move into higher studies because of COVID and job market declining, which means it's going to be extremely competitive. So you have to make that decision as to why is it that you want to pursue higher studies. And depending on the answer, you can decide whether you want to move into higher studies or whether you want to get like hands-on experience or not. Hands-on experience also matters a lot when you're applying for higher studies as well. So basically depends on what you want to do. Also, I would really like to thank Dr. Subasinghe for setting the stage really well, because that helps sort of like formulate the discussion in like quite an interesting way.
Well, that's true. So you brought up the credential inflation and the movement, the transition of more graduates to the field of academia. Let's address these issues in the times to come. Well, in the your age. So, well, next I would like to move on to. So this is a couple question that I would direct to two of our panelists, to Dr. Asanka Bulathwatta and Dr. Buddhima Subasinghe. Well, first of all, let's move on to Dr. Asanka Bulathwatta. So, like. Most people think in the academia, right, undergraduates, they think that the final year research and the field of bachelor's degree would be close related to their field of like higher studies. Well, I would like to know whether this is true, or like is your final year project or the bachelor's degree should be close related to your higher studies if you are going to continue your higher studies, like, or else will that make a large difference? Will that make a large impact if you try to make a divergence from the field of study? Yes, I think you would have an answer.
Yes, a good question. Thank you very much, Sahita, for the question. Actually, it has a short answer. Actually, it would be nice that it would be related to the masters and PhDs, that the bachelor research project that we are doing. However, a student can develop, create, and nurture the ideas start from the very beginning in the dissertation research project that they are engaged with. But the thing is, as Dr. Buddhima and also Ms. Minoli mentioned, that students are not really keen upon the ideas that they want to generate upon their research project, that they are doing the things, sometimes looking at around their senior students doing, or they are just imitating what others doing and they don't generate the ideas. But thing is, students should kind of nurture some kind of ideas, thought-provoking things they have to generate, and also they have to basically develop certain ideas from the research project that they can continue, extend towards the future research projects. But the thing is, students are not really think about that, because they, I would like to start with that triangle of domains of study: knowledge, skills, and the attitudes part. most of the students think about that knowledge and they try to disseminate it, and they try to put certain things into their dissertation project, and they just finish it. And but they don't think that they can extend it towards master studies and PhD studies further. But as other people mentioned, they have to think that we can start right from my dissertation project, one particular idea, then I can extend it towards that master thesis and the dissertation project in the PhD studies. Therefore, I think they can extend it. The short answer is they can extend the ideas to master's and dissertation project in the PhD projects.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So now let's move on to Dr. Buddhima. Well, Doctor, you emphasize the fact that of multipotency and creativity in your first speech. So, well, like moving on to that, when we try to reflect on the fact of multipotency, sometimes this fact of relating your bachelor's to your master's would change. So, what do you feel about this attitude of having the same field, considering the same field?
Yes.
I think you would have different.
Yes, Sahita, I totally agree with Minoli and Dr. Asanka in what they have spoken with regards to this. One thing, Minoli, I 100% agree with you. There has been students who walk up to me after their undergraduate studies who ask me, ma'am, I want to do an MBA, because there are so many MBAs out there, executive MBAs and 6-month MBAs, ma'am, 1-year MBAs, 2-year MBAs, and national universities are also giving MBAs, especially this University of Java, Adinapura, very difficult to get into that MBA because it's difficult to pass the aptitude test. So this is what students come and ask me, right? Ma'am, what should I do? I want to get an MBA, otherwise I don't feel like I will be accepted by my first job. So I clearly said this to the students, Sahita, I totally agree with Minoli. It's not just going after titles that matters at the end of the day. Hands-on, it's like this. What I truly believe is when it comes to the career path that you're going to select, you have to have a clear distinction between whether you're going to become an academic or whether you're actually going to end up in the industry. Now, if you're going to become an academic, I'm sure Dr. Asanka would agree with me, doing a master's and a PhD is a must for us to climb the ladder in the academia. Otherwise, we would just for the rest of the lifetime in the university. That's the life span of an academic if we do not pursue our higher studies. But on the other hand, when we speak of industry, the most important thing that matters is, like Minoli said, the hands-on experience, right? As soon as you finish your undergraduate studies, it's key, is very important for you to go out there, get your internship, and also get yourself a probationary job, and then become permanent and start working and getting your experience. Because where do you start? Generally, you start as a junior executive. Of course, you start with an internship, and then you move to becoming a junior executive, and then you become a senior executive, or rather an executive first, and then a senior executive, yeah, and then you become an assistant manager, and then you become a manager. Now, this question I always pose for the students, especially when they come and ask me, ma'am, should I do an MBA now, as soon as they finish their undergraduate studies? Now, the question I ask back from them is, what is the meaning of an MBA? Master of Business Administration. Are you actually administering the business? Is the first question I ask from them. Now, you need to talk to your heart and do the right thing at the right time, is something I truly believe. I don't know whether anybody will disagree with this, but this is my personal opinion when it comes to doing an MBA. If you are not having at least 2 people working under you in the industry that you work for, then you will not be administering the business. You'll be learning your skills, how you need to get into that job, right? You're still flowing, you're floating, right? You've not gotten into that deep end of the sea, right? That's when you become an assistant manager probably, or when you become a manager. That's when you have about 4 years of experience in the industry. And that's in terms of an MBA is what I truly believe. Because if you go and ask the top People in the industry out there, I'm sure they would give you the same answer, especially people who are senior managers or beyond. They do MBAs. Why? Because they need to administer the business, because they have more than 20, 30 people working under them. And they should know how to control these people, how to work with these people and give the right leadership, right strategy to take the goals of the organization forward. So doing an MBA at that early age is not something that I would really recommend a student who immediately comes and asks me as soon as they complete their undergraduate studies. So I totally agree with Minoli on that. And on the other hand, if you are pursuing your higher studies in terms of the academia, then I would definitely suggest you to start off with a master's and then move with a PhD. And at the same time, getting to your question, Sahita, in terms of doing that research that you did in your final year and taking it forward, I would say that it's not a requirement for you to continue the same research that you do in your final year for your master's or your PhD, or for you to go and do the same thing out there in the industry. It's not compulsory, right? And when it comes to me, I would open up about my career path. I started off in software engineering and also computer science. I did a double degree, and then I did my final year research in image processing. So I was deeply into active contours and all that, diagrams and all that. But then as soon as I finished my undergraduate studies, I published it. I got the best research paper gold award. I still remember I was embracing that research area. And then I was thinking, okay, fine. Am I going to move to do master's or a direct PhD? And then I thought, I had a dream. Most of you who've heard my story, I had a dream to become a medical doctor when I was a kid. But unfortunately, I was not able to achieve that goal because I was only 15 when I finished my A-levels, and my parents didn't want me to go abroad. So I had to end up being in Sri Lanka. And back then there was no SciTerm, or there was no other medical college that I could enter to start off an international medical degree. So I had to change my path. So I believe that life, is a series of ups and downs, twists and turns. It's not just one destination. So if you believe that it's just one destination, my dear students, remember that there's so many opportunities out there waiting to embrace you, waiting for you to embrace them as well. So grab those opportunities. So what I did was, I did my research on the computer, and then I came to a level where I found that cybersecurity, computer science, artificial intelligence, these areas are going to dominate the world in the next 10 years. Now, you would ask me, did you actually realize it at the age of 15? Yes, I did. Because I used to read a lot. I never watched television. I never watched teledramas. Even today, I don't watch the television. Only my maid watches the television at home. So you see, I only go through the news also from the internet. I just go to Adadharan or whatever. I go through the news. I become updated. That's all. So television is not in my forte. So even though I've been a presenter for 10 years, mind you. So my dear students, I found that computer science, technology is going to take over the world. Cybersecurity is going to play an important role in the next 10 years. And then I switched my research area when it comes to my PhD into a completely different area, image processing to security, two drastic areas. And then I was talking about fuzzy inferencing, neurofuzzy inferencing, and artificial intelligence, neural networks, deep learning. So those were my areas. But I enjoyed learning them because that's the future of technology. So now the next thing I'd like to tell you is, do not do your higher studies because of the university or because of the professor or because of the senior lecturer whom with you have to do your research with. All right, I hope I made it clear to you. Do not pursue your higher studies or your research just because you have to do it at a particular university that you're destined to do it, or because of a particular person whom you are attached to. You have to do the research that you love to do. You have to research on something that you're passionate about, that you feel like, this is something I want to do to the world. This is something I want to create for the world. Have a vision like that and go deep down research and gain insights out of it. You will succeed. Do not believe that you are a girl and you're not able to do automobile engineering and come up with the next self-driving car or the self-driving plane. You can do it. You can do it if you want to do it. Remember that. So you have to select your research area with what you are passionate about, and it's definitely not going to depend on what you've been doing for the last 3 years or 4 years, because research is something very, very interesting when you embrace it, and you need to love. I always had a target. Once in 3 months, 4 months, I want to travel the world. I want to publish a paper, right? So those were dreams, milestones, targets that I set for myself. Not that my professors set it for me. I set it for myself. So embrace the opportunities out there. Back to you, Sahitha.
Yes. May I
Well,
want a little bit clarify about certain things that I talked. Actually, I totally agree with Buddhima mentioned, the things that Buddhima mentioned, because the student, if a student can start their dissertation project and they can widen it up to the master's and dissertation project in this PhD project is really nice. But the thing is, nowadays, the world is really changing. Sometimes a student has to apply for the certain placements where they really waiting for a long period of time. Then supervisors' ideas and other colleagues' ideas, they have to affirm the diversity of the supervisors and accept what they are asked you to do, you have to do. But the thing is, if you start a dissertation project in the bachelor stage, for instance, in the clinical psychology field, you can go towards kind of field in the master's, also in the some topics related to clinical psychology, and end up with the dissertation project in the PhD also in the clinical psychological field. Then you can give kind of huge service, huge kind of knowledge dissemination later on to the society. This is one particular thing. At the same time, you can also start knowledge dissemination, right? Start from the very beginning of the dissertation project in the bachelor's, then master's and the PhD project, because most of the students are really think about the dissemination activities in terms of their publication in impact factor journals once they are doing their PhDs. But they really forget that they have done great project during their bachelor's and the masters. They have to also think about that. At the same time, I emphasize that knowledge, the triangle of learning, knowledge, skills and attitudes, you have to think about. Even with the research project also, you can apply it. You can search knowledge in terms of literature surveys and methodological part and present in your results. At the same time, the other skills like skills of not copying, plagiarisms, not doing kind of things, your attitudes are really important in that manner. In such cases, you can develop further as a fully competent person to the society with your even with the research project as well. Students think that this knowledge triangles, knowledge, skills, attitudes are something that we have to think literally once we are studying, but it's not the case. You have to apply it in your life. This is very important. Therefore, we can widen up our dissertation project towards master's and the PhD project. At the same time, you can flexibly arrange it in a way that comfortable to your life to become a position or person that you want to become in future. As Buddhima mentioned, the goal settings is really important in such cases. Minoli mentioned that if the person doesn't want actually to go to the domains of that dissertation project in the PhDs, masters, they can go change the pathways to the other areas in the industrial settings or some other area, professional settings, because the dissertation in the bachelor's stage is a point people understand, am I into the research or am I not into the research? Therefore, you have a huge responsibility to understand clearly your area, in that research project. Therefore, please do it very comprehensive way. In case if you are doing comprehensive manner, if you don't feel it, then you have to change your pathway to the professional side, not to the research area. If you really feel, if you really nurture further the research project, want to nurture research project further, please go to the academia.
That's
Can
very
I
true.
also just, yes,
Agree.
can I
Yes,
just also
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
add
very true.
something?
Agree with Dr. Asanka with what he has mentioned. I think when it comes to continuing the research in that same area as Dr. Asanka mentioned, that's always possible, and you're really welcome to do it in whatever the field you are in. Your undergraduate research, you can always continue with your masters and take it down to your PhD as well. But do not fear that, you know, if you still want to make a change, change is inevitable. It's a part of life, and take that leap, because you will always become multi-talented and multifaceted, as Dr. Asanka also mentioned, in different other fields and areas, probably that spans across a particular field, which is also very, very important. And on the other hand, speaking of research publications, I think as Dr. Asanka mentioned, I would also like to emphasize the fact, if you are starting your final year dissertation, start off your final year dissertation on day one. Do not start writing it in the last 2 weeks when you're just about to submit it. This is actually being done even in masters or even in PhDs in some cases. But I've also got a professor who has been advising me from Cambridge. One advice he gave me, Buddhima, if you're going to start your PhD today, start writing your thesis today, and be passionate about your research, so that you start publishing every 3 months. Like I told you, that's exactly what I did, and you get a lot of satisfaction. I'm sure Dr. Asanka would agree with it as well. And
Yeah,
yes,
just to
Minoli.
add one thing, I completely agree with both Dr. Subasinghe and Dr. Bulathwatta, but also being someone who's, I guess, in a way kind of unconventional. So I did biology for my A-levels. I started like a BSc. Halfway through, decided it's really not the thing for me. I'm more interested in language arts education, shifted fields, and then I did English language and literature, but then shifted again. And so I think right now I'm working on comparative and international education, which is far broader. But I've also done like halfway through my master's in literature, and it's a very broad field. But also the thing is, like halfway through, like I think Dr. Subasinghe rightly said, when you're doing your dissertation, usually in the undergrad, you also get an inkling of the areas that you're really interested in. And sometimes that don't necessarily fall into the title of your bachelor's. But it's completely fine, and there are lots of opportunities for you to shift fields if that's where your passion lies. So like also I think that's something that I personally found quite concerning. Like, oh no, I started my bachelor's in a particular subject. Now am I bound to this for life? And you really aren't. And that's also where like your general publications, because once you get the hang of research and if you're really passionate about it, like both of the panelists mentioned, you can get published. And getting published is also a rather say, and not an easy way, but it actually gives you a push when you want to shift fields, because you have self-learned, you have experience, you have done research, you're knowledgeable about a particular area. So shifting fields is also possible. And like I would say it's kind of flexible at this point. Just really like follow what your heart wants you to do, follow your passion. Because one thing that a couple of my professors even here keep telling me is when you're selecting your research project, especially for a PhD, pick something that you're really passionate about, because after about like the first like I'm sure the two of you will be able to talk to this much better, but after like the first like 1.5 years, it's literally the passion that gets you out of bed in the morning, because you're so tired of everything. So you're just like, do what you're really passionate about.
Yes, it's a good point that Minoli mentioned. Actually, I also wanted to mention about my real life, actually, because I also changed certain pathways, because I did my art subject from bio subject 2 times for the A-levels. Then I changed my pathway for the third time. That then I did art subject. Then I entered into the university. Then it was kind of a story that other people can also motivate, that people can change the pathways that they are not really willing to work further. At the same time, that research component, for instance, I did my bachelor's about the marketing field, for instance, persuasive impact of effective advertising messages. Then I did my master's in work, organization, personal psychology, but my research area was mainly focused about emotional intelligence and self-efficacy and coping strategies. Then I further it in the dissertation project about how to develop that, how to people cope up with the traumatic experiences when they are having so many traumatic experiences in their real life. You got university student as my sample. Then that idea that I wanted to give to the students who participate today is that you have to find a way, any way that you have to find a kind of opportunities in your life. You might face certain difficulties, certain up and downs, haphazards in your life, but the thing is the bounce back capacities. I think Buddhima mentioned resilience capacity is really essential. This is very important in your life. Don't like, you can fall down, but the thing is that you have to wake up back, bounce back from the difficulties in your life, academic life, as well as some professional pathways that we are facing nowadays have many problems encountering nowadays. Therefore, you have to bounce back with the difficulties and find your pathways. This is very important.
Yeah, sure. So that is also a field of an aspect of interest on today's discussion. We'll come back to Dr. Bulathwatta on specifically on that particular question. I'll direct it to you when the time comes. So so as you all said, so as our experts emphasize on the fact, and it was so inspiring for especially Sri Lankan undergraduates. We have seen most of the international students shifting, directing and diverging, and then also shifting between several disciplines in the field of work, field of academia. Like it's more usual and it's more common. But here in Sri Lanka, when you consider an undergraduate, it's like you're bound to it, as Ms. Minoli's expressed. It's like something of a bound. It's bound. Like we have that aspect of mentality, like we have to complete the bachelor's and then get out with something and then decide. So that's why we are trying to have this expert discussion, this insight of expertise, how we can change this mindset, as Dr. Bulathwatta said. So this has to do with more with psychology, right? Well, before we move on to that question, I would like to have a move on to Minoli. Well, we know that masters in postgraduate studies, in higher studies, we have postgraduate diploma, postgraduate masters, a PhD, and several aspects in their own field. They would benefit the student in the field that they select. So I would like to have a quite quick answer on this. Like, what is the difference between this masters, PhD, diploma, and how they will benefit you, how they relate?
Okay, so that's a very factual, quick question. So when we look at postgrad studies, you have postgraduate diplomas, you have postgraduate certificates, diplomas, and then you have your masters. In your masters, you can have a taught masters or a research-based masters. Then you have your PhD. So as you move higher up, like from a postgraduate certificate to a PhD, the time commitment required increases. And also the focus area, the amount of commitment and the amount of, like, the focus you have on a particular topic also increases. So the shortest is like postgraduate certificates to diplomas. You have like 6 months to 1 year sort of programs that gives you a general idea, less commitment. And then you have your taught masters, which again teaches you a component. And you have a little more commitment and a little bit longer period of time. But that's to give you like an overall, like a broad view of a particular topic. Far more, say, concise and focused than a bachelor's, but not as focused as a PhD. A research master's is where you basically spend majority of your time focusing on a particular topic that you want to research on. There's usually no taught component other than like your discussions with your supervisor or like tutorials based on the universities that you select. A PhD is the biggest commitment that you would make, from like 3 to 5 to 7 years. And that basically is you becoming sort of an expert in a particular somewhat niche topic that you know you are just going to spend about 7 years learning and studying about it. In terms of flexibility, if you just want to learn more about whether you're interested in a particular topic or not, you can start off with a postgrad certificate or a diploma, less time commitment. And also, whatever you learn, I personally never goes to waste. I did marketing, I did CIM for 3 years while working, and I do use it now, but you know, like not really a qualification that I'm going to be using in my like formal applications. But if you're interested in a topic, just start with a certificate or a diploma normal financial commitment is less, time commitment is less, and that will give you an inkling whether you're prepared to do the commitment required for a master's or a PhD.
Well, yeah, that was concise and in context. Well, that was informative. Thank you, Minoli. Well, as an undergrad, what I feel is this journey of undergraduate life is like, especially not because of COVID, but yet this is like a lifelong tiring journey. Like we feel 4 years of undergrad as like 4 to 5 years. I think I have not like worked and had so much of stuff, information or loading into my brain as such ever in my life. Like in this undergrad period. So I think this is the same feel that we have. This is a shared perception. Like Dr. Bulathwatta, since your field is on psychology, like we feel that the postgraduate studies is just like an extension of this burden, of this tiring effort. That's what most people feel. I mean, most undergrad feel. So I would like to ask you, what are the tips that would bring relief to the graduates who are willing to pursue postgraduate studies? Like how can you maintain the good mental condition, the mental well-being, the mental health, the mindset, and how can you revive your brain so that you are ready to pursue a career and then, or else to go into higher study, to do a master's or a diploma or else a PhD with a proper vision, like clear set in your mind.
Yeah, you mean that during the period of that they are doing postgraduate, or the afterwards they are dissertation from the
Yes,
bachelor's?
after the dissertation, after the bachelor's.
Okay,
or
yeah,
else like,
now
and yes.
I got your point. The thing is that we have to think what we want. The goal is really important in that sense, but we are going to achieve a huge goal after the bachelor's, then we are going to start the postgraduate studies. Definitely then you should have kind of keen interest. In such cases, you have to manage other life matters very well, in which that creates so many stress within students. That start in masters and go extend into the PhD project is not like a small job. It's like a huge task that students have to think. But the thing is, at the same time, we have to face so many troubles. Nowadays, we have situational problems due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Then students should manage their emotional well-being and also the resilience capacities with certain troubles that they are facing is really important. But most of the students forget that how to provide the emotional and the emotional resilience and many more things once they face certain troubles. They used to have so many maladaptive coping strategies such as oversleeping or kind of alcoholic behaviors or certain things, because they want to temporarily forget about the things. But they have ample amount of ways to manage their stress due to this stress that they encountering with the situational problems due to their master's and PhD project. For instance, they might have to change totally their research topic after they meet with the supervisors. Then it can be really stress for many students. They went with so many hopes to get correction with the supervisors, but finally it's collapsed due to the feedback that came from the supervisor. Then it can be happen. Then these kind of stresses should manage from the students. What they can do is they have to diversify their life. Most of the students really focus about the particular things once they are doing. It's really good. But the thing is they have to diversify their life in terms of maybe if they go abroad, they can start to learn languages, foreign languages. And then it's totally different from the research project that they started. Then their brain is diversified, their cognitive capacities get really really functioning well, because it's multifaceted. The brain functioning very well because our brain has the focus mode and diffuse mode. Then most of this time that we are focusing with the dissertation project or master thesis, our diffuse mode is not really functioning in the brain. But to become a creative person, to become a well functioning person, they both brain should be functioning, but those brains are not functioning at the same time. One time focus mode, diffuse mode one time. Once we are doing like kind of creative task and think very creatively about particular things, our diffuse mode is functioning. Then we have to think every time to let our brain function in two modes, focus mode and the diffuse mode. You have to learn language, talk with sometimes friends who are really native in that country where you study for the postgraduate studies, and also take advantage of the project also can be happen. You can do particular progress in your research project, then you can start to travel and conference and find certain things, and then you can visit the certain countries, and at the same time you can give kind of like a progress to your research project as well after presenting in the conference and meeting up with new people, scholars. And it's really a nice world than we think. But most of the cases people think PhDs, done PhDs, more uh, the best PhDs is done PhD. They have certain things to think. They want to anyhow complete the things. Then they are really stressful once they get kind of constructive criticisms and most of the things from the supervisors and the colleagues from there. Therefore, we have to learn certain skills like assertiveness skills, and also kind of emotional resilience skills, managing our life with the exercise and everything's physical well-being and the psychological well-being, how to balance your life. If you are married, you have to think about your family life, as well as how you balance your academic life at the same time. So, you know, there is a concept so-called work-life balance in the organizations. And likewise, when we do the postgraduate study also, you have to manage your personal well-being at the same time, the academic well-being at the same time. You can use certain strategies. I can't exactly tell you have to use this, because not if all the strategies are really functioning with all the people. Therefore, you have to find your own way. I think you have to learn how to learn also. Then it is really important. Most of the people try to imitate other people's way of studying. That person is writing chapters without sleeping at the night, then I also have to write the chapters without any sleep. This is not the case. You have to find your own way, your lifestyle, but how it's functioning. You have to function your focus mode of your brain and the diffuse mode of your brain. When you start to stimulate these both brain areas, functioning focus mode and diffuse mode, then you start to stimulate your brain, then you are really creative than you think. Then you will come up with so many creative ideas in your research project and other academic activities that you are doing. But people, including me, sometimes forget to follow all the things. But the thing is, you have to find your life rhythm. You have to find how your life is functioning, how you are creative, how your creativity can be included into your research project. These things are really important to get rid of from your burnout, and also get rid of from your psychosocial troubles that you are facing with your postgraduate studies.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Sahita, I'd like
Yes,
to
please.
add a small thing there to what Dr. Asanka mentioned. I think when it comes to women, Minoli would agree, especially when I was doing my PhD. Now for women in Sri Lanka, there's a written book, right? You need to go to school, and then you have to get into a university. And after you finish your higher education in terms of your university studies, you need to get into a job, and then get married, and then have kids, whatnot. Yeah. So these are the questions that your neighbors, your relatives, your friends, everybody will be asking. Now, it was the same for me. Even my parents had a lot of issues with the decisions that I made for myself. So I still remember now, after I finished my undergraduate studies, I started working at Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology, SLIT, as a lecturer. And I was lecturing for like 2.5 years. And then I decided to stop for a while because I wanted to continue my PhD full time, because I was also targeting a record at a younger age to complete my PhD. So I still remember coming back home and telling my dad that I'm going to give the resignation letter, and he was very upset. He was very upset, and my parents were devastated. They never expected me to do it. When you're having a good job, when you've done your studies, what are we going to tell the relatives, the neighbors, and everybody would be surprised with the decision you're making. So many problems. Yeah. So somehow I convinced to them that I'm going to do this, and this is for a cause. This is because I have a goal. and I need to work around this goal, and let me prove it. Let me prove it is one thing I begged upon, and I was able to grant permission from them. And then in the journey of achieving, now I resigned from my job, yeah. And then people used to call and ask me, so until when are you doing your PhD? So you don't have a job? Are you just staying at home? What are you even doing? When are you even getting married? No plans to have kids? So these are the questions. It becomes a big stress. I think Dr. Asanka would also agree. These are pressures that we get from the external surroundings, and we feel like giving up. Literally, this is enough.
Yes,
right? At one
totally.
point in life, we feel this is enough. But my dear students, one thing I'd like to suggest to you is, at that very point, you feel like this is enough. Is that point you have to hold on. You have to hold on and still take the very next step forward, because that's where you will be taking the leap forward sometimes. Yeah. So never give up on that dream, on that goal that you wanted to achieve in life just because of somebody else. Because there will be many people to tell a lot of things about what you're doing. A lot of people around you can always comment on so many things that you are doing and who you are, but only you can define who you are, who you want to be in life. So own your life and be the king or the queen of your life is what I would like to suggest, because after all, you need to write the story of your life. And when you finish that book one day, you would be very happy and satisfied that you owned your life, you owned your decisions, and you are here today as a product because of the decisions that you've made in your life. So never give up. Being resilient, Dr. Asanka, I'd like to also add on to it. I think Sri Lanka, we've been going through a lot in life, haven't we? Tsunami has given us a lot of bad experiences, and now COVID-19 has given us a lot of bad experiences as well. So natural disasters, be it a pandemic situation, we've gone through enough, but yet we've picked ourselves up and been courageous to move forward. We are that bunch, we Sri Lankans. 30-year-old war has really traumatized us. When we left out to work or maybe to university, we didn't expect to come back home during the 30-year-old war. But yet, we were able to pick ourselves back up again and move forward. So always remember that you are a resilient person. You still can pick yourself back up again and move forward. I think that self-belief really, really matters when no one else around you will believe in you sometimes. Over to you, Sahita.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bulathwatta and Dr. Subasinghe. That would certainly be a motivation for young undergrads who are like trying to take their giant leap in their life and then move forward, enter the next age. Well, let me like remind the audience that you are free to post your questions on the chat box. I think we are entering into a very informative and very interesting discussion now with our panel of experts. So I know certainly you'd have many questions to ask them. They are experts, personalities. They are the ones who have climbed the ladder of academia, and they will be undoubtedly the role models, or as ones that will admire your life, ones will bring meaning to the questions that you have. So don't hesitate, post your questions, and here our panel of experts will direct it in the Q&A session. We are going to have the Q&A session at the end of the discussion. Well, now, like let us take the interaction of our audience, Dr. It's really important in the discussion why they are the targeted group. Like, they want to have the insights in their life. They are going to change their life. They are going to be the visionary leaders. Well, so like most people are concerned about the rankings, the world ranking, university ranking. We have Times Higher university rankings, we have QSW World University rankings as such. So we will have a scale that is displayed on the screen. Like our audience can vote the scale and see what they feel about the university rankings related to the academic studies. Yes, now the scale will be displayed, so you can scale it according to your own opinion, so that we can move on in our discussion. Yes.
So I have while our audience is actually doing the scale, I would like to add to something that Dr. Subasinghe mentioned. Yes, the whole like being a woman in the field of higher education, like if your general stress level is at like say 50, might be just being in the academia studying, and when you're a woman, it's just there's a whole other added element. Like it's also the constant questions, one of, oh, like when I'm getting married, when I'm having kids, like because the perception, especially like in our communities, is that it doesn't matter what credentials you have if you're a woman, if you're not married and having kids, your life is basically pointless. What are you doing with your life is like a general perception. So it becomes quite stressful. And then it gets compounded, especially say, not everyone would choose to go into higher studies, which means you have your friends from school, you have your friends from university, you interact on social media, you open your, I don't know, Instagram, and then you see like wedding pictures, birth announcements, and then there are instances, of course, that you yourself would feel quite stressed and pressured.
Let me disturb you,
Of course.
Minoli. Yeah, so the link for the Mentimeter is in the chat box. You can, it's about 1 minute more, right? You have time, just log on to the chat box, click on that link, and the scale will pop up. You just have to scale it, right? You can find the link on the chat box, and then meanwhile you also can post your questions, and then it'll be like, yeah, we have about 40 odd minutes more. Yeah, it's 46 actually, so about 45 minutes you still have the chance to vote the scale. You can scale it. Just click on the link on the chat box, right? I invite everyone who is here, my friends, just click on it and have your opinion, so that our discussion will be fruitful, because we know what you are thinking. Yes, over to you, Minoli.
It's so basically say that when you are a woman in the high, it's going to be very, very, very stressful. Like there's no sugarcoating it. So resilience also becomes important. And this is my personal belief. I also think that women who, no offense to any of the men in the like group or anything, but I do believe that like women are able to handle pressure if they can get through this period, because the pressure and the stress that you go through to get to a particular point is it's extreme. Which, just like as you're going through it, you can think of it as training for when you are out in the industry, when you're even in if you want to be in the academia, when you're in the academia, to deal with stress, to negotiate, to understand what's happening. But like all the park, it's going to be 100 times worse.
Yes.
So
I also
absolutely. And adding to Minoli, I'd like to also tell now when it comes to a woman, like she rightly mentioned, it's definitely not going to be a bed of roses. But on the other hand, also I think Minoli, women have this ability to wear many hats at the same time. So we see a mom at home, a sister, a daughter, maybe.
We're very good at multitasking. That helps.
Absolutely, very, very good at multitasking in one way, and at the same time the world is digitalizing and transforming to a different level, and we are looking at a smarter world in the future. And I'm sure there'll be many working mothers who will be working from home in the future as well, because work from home is now a trend with the pandemic situation. So we women really, I don't think, need to worry about these maternity leaves and then leaving kids at home and going to work anymore, because there'll be a lot many more opportunities out there. Especially maybe you can join a multinational organization, yet you can work from home and also look after your kids and manage both at the same time, with that quality of multitasking that women have within them. One thing I truly believe.
To add to that, Dr. Subasinghe, I think there's also, I'm just being very focused on women right now. There's also this misconception that if you're a woman, you'll have to choose family or career, and that you can't have both, which is not true. You can have both. So just don't give in to that pressure, because it will come, but you don't have to give in to it. You can have both. You don't have to choose one or the other.
Absolutely agreed.
Pressure, I would like to add certain things, because if you go to that the off-street center for the cultural comparison, you can compare Sri Lanka with certain cultures, so Germany, America, or some other countries. Then you can see which kind of cultural variables we are really differ from other countries. Indulgence rate is really different from other countries in Sri Lanka when we compare with other countries. Then we can see how we think of with how we decide, how we make certain decisions based upon other people's. Most of the cases, people start their PhD project with their own decision, but they are really unstable once they are in the middle of their journey, and also before they finish it up, because of the stress that they gain from the research project or kind of academic pressure. They are really sensitive. Then they think about so many others, pressure and also stresses that came from outside. What I suggest is that we have to develop our resilience capacities. At the same time, women are really strong, because with my personal opinion, I know I work with so many PhD candidates who were women. Then I know how they really strongly face for the certain problems than me sometimes in certain situations, with some kids also, with family problems. And then they are really strong. We have to affirm that the quality of that our own personal strengths. We shouldn't every time think about problems are really always remaining in our life. Those are really temporary. We have to work with all the things, and we have to work with time management techniques and think like a very optimistic way for the problems, and you will overcome it. And I think PhD would be also kind of a very good coping strategy for you to focus about particular things. Once you are having serious trouble, you can focus about a particular article and work upon it and publish it in impact factor journal. Then you will have kind of advantage in future, not think about particular things. So I mean, because it's kind of adaptive coping strategy for your life.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. So that was a good motivation in a time that we admire a lot of emotional intelligence and conceptual resilience. So that would bring out the fact that is there, that's so important. Well, coming on to our scale, let me ask you the direct question. I would like to direct this question to Minoli and Dr. Asanka. Well, how far should we consider the university rankings when we decide to choose a postgraduate institute or a university?
I would like to go first, because there's something that I would actually like Dr. Asanka to talk about, considering like your background. I read your like postgrad experience, like universities and all that. So like, I would like to go first because I feel like that will then like aid in that. Personally, I did not check like QS rankings or Times Education rankings when I was choosing university, like a university for like my higher studies. I know it sounds a bit hypocritical being at Oxford and saying that. It sounds a little hypocritical, I'm aware of it, but I personally don't. And another thing that I really want to emphasize is that in Sri Lanka, we do have brilliant academics. We have brilliant people back like home itself who can do a lot of work, who are doing a lot of work in terms of higher studies and like their PhDs and supervisions and things like that. Having said that, if you are looking at university rankings, you need to know what are the criteria behind this ranking. And usually it's research publications. So teaching, let's say the pedagogical factor is not really factored in some of these rankings. So that's something to remember. Just because the university ranks really high doesn't mean they have a very good teaching mechanism. It means they have amazing researchers, but it also means they have a lot of funding to hire enough people to sit there and outproduce research. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best place in the world. Having said that, however, this is also, I would really like Dr. Bulathwatta to come in, because in Germany, for example, there are amazing universities who refuse to be a part of, who refuse to put their names on any of these rankings, who refuse to be a part of rankings. But they're amazing places because their opinion is learning is about knowledge. It's a pursuit of knowledge. It's not this neoliberal market-oriented ranking system. So they refuse to be a part of it. So if you're someone who's looking at simply a ranking, you're missing out on some amazing scholars, amazing opportunities, amazing universities. So I would say because I can see a lot of people prefer to carry out their postgrad studies abroad. That's a really good idea. Having done a postgrad in Sri Lanka and then now doing it here, the exposure that you get, the conversations that you have will definitely help, especially like when you want to come back home and work, the connections, the networks, all of that is going to help for sure. But personally, I don't think you should focus too much on university rankings according to some criteria that has been put out by largely market-based research. Look at, again, like what your areas are interested in. If you're looking at particular people, what sort of research have they produced, their areas of research. Funding opportunities, of course, because we have to be practical, things like that. And personally, I wouldn't put a lot of weight on QS rankings or Times Education rankings.
Yeah, yes, Dr. Asanka.
Yeah.
Yes, we have
Yeah,
our scale too,
definitely
like
that,
about the scaling. You can see the scaling on the screen. You can refer to that too. So that's how our audience think. Yes, over to you, Dr. Bulathwatta.
Yes, scale in universities, ranking universities also, I agreed that we shouldn't stick upon the idea that we have to go to the higher ranking universities always, because it's not like award ceremony that you can see sometimes in televisions, and most of the times that same television channels get every time, so all the time the awards from the award ceremony. But the thing is that basically this ranking based on the teaching capacities of this that particular university, research disseminations, and also international outlook of that particular university. But the thing is, we can't every time assure the fact that every time it has a transparency to award these universities based on that particular criteria that I mentioned, that teaching knowledge disseminations, and also the international about the university ranking and apply for the universities always obtain from certain universities. For instance, in Germany, as including these particular ranking orders, it's still they are working very well, but we never know how they got ranked very lower from that particular ranking. Therefore, people obsessively think about that ranking, and they might lose great opportunities. Thinking about not always the ranking they might miss the chance that they can spend, miss the time that they can spend for some important task in their dissertation project always. Because if you perform well in your research project, if you have published your articles in impact factor journals, you might get more marks from the interviews than thinking about that particular considering the particular university that you studied. Maybe your universities, and then you might get great marks. Then people world ranking of the university that you studied. This is the case that people might think sometimes unnecessary things that they shouldn't think. But they might not think the matter of the fact that they have to always think, for instance, publications in impact factor journals, doing research which is really important to society, solving problems in the society that is really essential, and knowledge disseminations, and try to build up a proper platform for the young academia to enter after you. Those are really important. But thinking about the world ranking of the universities and applying for them, you can do it. If you get placement, it's really great. I am not really discriminate or invalidate particular things that students are doing, but if you get kind of chance from a university which is not really higher ranked, if you say no for them, it would be not really a great decision that you can take. You have to take that opportunity. You can shape up yourself inside that particular university, and you can develop, you can get your rank order higher from your qualification, not think about the world ranking of the universities always like a prioritized matter. You can have more other things you can think about your academic life, in your academic life.
Thank you, Dr. Bulathwatta. So let me turn on to Dr. Buddhima. So Dr. Buddhima, as a person whom have like completed the PhD itself in Sri Lanka, so one of the paramount decisions that our undergraduates have to make after their bachelor's degree is that whether to go abroad or continue the higher studies here. So as a person, like the first-hand experience, right? How do you like to address this timely matter? Whether to stay in Sri Lanka
Well,
to
yes.
continue the studies or else go abroad? I think we came up with that point
Well,
in the
yes.
earlier question. Yeah.
Yes. I think I totally agree with Minoli and Dr. Asanka, in terms of rankings as well. It's really not the rankings that matters. I think you need to look at what you are looking for. Is it the particular research area that you want to excel in, or is it the innovative pedagogical methods that you're looking at, maybe experiential active based learning that you're looking at, or maybe you're looking at getting more engagement experience in the university, because after all, your network is your net worth at the end of the day. So I think Dr. Asanka also mentioned about it with regards to going for conferences and meeting people. My God, I've got that vast experience in traveling around the world and being at many different conferences. So it is a fruitful experience. So what are you looking at is the question you need to ask clearly. And at the same time, when answering your question with regards to taking the decision whether you're going to do your postgraduate studies here or going abroad, one direct answer that I'd like to give is, it's not where you do that matters, it's how you do it, and how well you do it, and what you do that matters at the end of the day. I'm sure the other two academics also would agree with what I'm saying, because after all, you can always go to the best university out there in the world in terms of ranking that you are looking at. But if you've not excelled in what you were supposed to do, I think Dr. Asanka also said there are some people who do the PhD just for the sake of doing it, and maybe I just want to get rid of it, I just want to finish it. So if that is what you're looking at, then there is no point at the end of the day. So in my case, it wasn't the university that I looked for. It wasn't a supervisor that I was targeting at. It wasn't a particular set of academics that I want to work with that I was looking at. I was looking at my research area, and I thought University of Peradeniya Computer Science Department had the professors there who were researching in this area in the field. And also my research was in fact multidisciplinary. I also had professors from the CSE department from University of Moratuwa as well. And also I had a professor from Cambridge University who was also mentoring me from that end. So it was a mix of all these things. And ultimately I was able to stay here in Sri Lanka and experience the best of the best in terms of the support from family, all that. And at the same time, I traveled the world every 3 to 4 months. I still remember my mentor from Cambridge University. He was a researcher there, and what he was telling me is, Buddhima, it's always important that you start your dissertation from day one, and at the same time continue writing, so that at the end of your 3rd, 4th month, you will still be able to do a publication. So in the probably the 5th month of starting my PhD, I did the first publication, and I traveled the world. And it's just amazing. Like Dr. Asanka said, you meet a lot of people out there. You stay for 5 to 6 or maybe 7 days there in that particular country that you visit, and you learn a lot more. But on the other hand, also, if you get the opportunity to get a scholarship and visit another country and do your postgraduate studies, just like Minoli is doing, that's perfectly great. That's amazing. But ask the question from you, do you still want to stay here and do it? You are welcome. You can do it, provided the fact that you do enough and more international publications, not just local publications, but travel the world, prove yourself and come back, because that really matters at the end of the day when you get into an interview, because how you do it, how well you do it, and what you do is what matters at the end of the day. Over to you.
What you do, what matters at the end of the day. Yeah, well, that's the idea. We'll struck the minds of this youth. Well, in this discussion, it would not be fruitful if we not discuss about this condition that we are facing, which had locked us down in quarantine. Well, we know that the value of education is immensely increasing. We know that education is the transmission of civilization. It is what we have brought from the Neolithic ages to the Starship and the Neuralink. But still, this COVID-19 has disrupted many of the university system as well as the overall the education. We'll like to know the global impact of COVID-19 on higher studies. What is the opinion of our audience? So we have a poll down there at the chat box. So You can click on it and then vote to it. It's a poll to symbolizes your opinion about the COVID-19 impact on the postgraduate studies or the higher studies. Then we can come back to our discussion. Yes, so you can just click on the chat box, in the link in the chat box, and then comment or else like express your view or opinion on how you think and what you think on this global impact of the global pandemic on the postgraduate studies. Yeah, we can see the columns bars changing their heights, and then yeah, okay, whether it is a positive impact, negative impact, or no idea. We see. So we have a couple of minutes more. You still can vote. I know this is a direct question. You also can answer. Well, this is the thing that have like kept you home, and this is the thing that always haunts in your mind when you get up and go to sleep. COVID, and what it will do to my studies. Well, we have a few seconds more. You still can vote. So I invite all viewers all around the country who are just with us, just come up and then click on the link and then post the answer on the Mentimeter. Well, yeah, I think we have reached a stable position. Okay, voting is closed. Well, this is it. So I would like to direct my question to Dr. Bulathwatta. So applying for a postgraduate degree, postgraduate study program, and getting accepted in this COVID-19, what will it be like? Will it be a positive trend or a negative trend? We have seen the opinion of our audience. What do you think?
People believe it's
Dr.
negative
Bulathwatta?
impact. Of course, it has positive and negative impact, as it's indicate from this chart. Most of the cases nowadays, what happened with the postgraduate studies with this red line or with this COVID-19 pandemic, people have different way of orientations towards that. Then they might, if they accept in Sri Lankan settings, they might adapt to there, or if they accept in foreign country, they might abroad. And then they will start their postgraduate studies after orientation time. But nowadays, they have to work with certain digital platforms before they start their postgraduate studies. Most of the cases, when they accepted by the universities, they have to start their academic life with face-to-face or synchronous or asynchronous online learning platforms. Then it is quite a challenge for the many people, because they are not really familiarized with the technological advancement and technological competencies. Then they have to adapt them. But positive point is they can learn certain technological matters, and they can start to adapt such kind of things. They can face that challenge. And the disadvantage of such matters is that face-to-face interaction will be really minimized. They will not meet with the people face-to-face, and it might be really and in their research projects, and they might not really share in their ideas with the other colleagues, and also as well as with the supervisors, as it can be done with the face-to-face interaction. This is kind of a disadvantage. At the same time, they have kind of quite unstable feelings about their future. They are really not sure about what will happen, how it will end up. Do I need to complete this all the times with the synchronous or asynchronous manner online, my PhD project or masters? Then it would will people recognize? Will they recognize me as the COVID-19 pandemic PhD holder or COVID-19 pandemic master holder or something like that? Then it is kind of a problem about their impression with the people. And motivation level also really unstable. Some days they are really motivated, some days they are really demotivate due to that stay from home and work from home. It is not really easy as we talk work from home, because some days are really not the good day for us, all of us, due to some kind of our these positional characteristics. And it is not easy all the ways to stay in the same personality all the time. Therefore, that can be matter for your performance in the research project that you start in the online mode, because no one will encourage you likewise we do in the face-to-face interactions. We might not have colleagues, supervisors to sometimes not spoon feed, but to ask you to do things, or to ask you to give you kind of constructive feedback in case that you are really demotivated. So this is when it comes to online learning, it's up to you. You have to do a lot of things in these digital platforms. Negative feelings, you have to manage your psychological well-being alone. Sometimes maybe counseling can be done throughout the online mode also, but the thing is it's not that easy for students to manage. But the thing is, if they try to find a positive point in it, they can really come up, overcome these challenges that they are facing with. What they can do is they can use kind of time management techniques. You know that there are kind of techniques that you can use. I recently got to know about kind of Pomodoro techniques. Pomodoro is kind of tomato in Italian, and you can fix certain timers, 25 minutes timers. Then you can make certain tasks accomplish particular days. Then you can count how many Pomodoros, 25 minutes that I can spend today for completing particular task. For instance, if you start to write particular chapter, then I will finish my particular subtopics within 25 minutes. Then you can arrange particular timer, 25 minutes in your mobile phone or some timer, then finish it. Then timer will indicate with the clinging that you have to finish it. Then you have to start back. Then you know that someone will motivate you to finish particular things. Then you use the technology to enhance your capacity to focus with using the technology. Because sometimes you might really demotivate due to the technology. You might go to social media, you might check your Facebook or something, Instagram or something like that. Then you will not really remember what you started. Then it's better you avoid little bit some kind of distractions that can happen in the social media or kind of things, in terms of kind of things. Focus about what you want to finish. And moral compass, it's really essential. Control yourself. It's really essential. It is not like oh, I am not doing this, I am really controlling myself, I'm focusing. It is not that case. You have to think, your moral compass, you have to use it. You have to morally act towards your research project. You have to think that no one will control me. I am the control in my own self. Therefore, I have to finish this task. Fix timers, 25 minutes, use Pomodoro's technique, then you finish your task. Controlling yourself is really essential. And also social support system is really important. You can, nowadays we have WhatsApp, Viber, many more things, and create a social group, facilitate you to enhance and focus your research project. Deal with them, send them message in case that you're having problems, all kind of things, and contact someone close if you have huge troubles, burden in your life. It's really essential, social support system. And also you can use some meditation and relaxation, mindfulness techniques also when you do alone something really technologically rely upon.
Sahita, can I add
Indeed.
something to this?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
So also because considering I am like a pandemic master student myself right now, I'm quite grateful that I have a lot of face-to-face sessions. And like Dr. Bulathwatta rightly said, when you don't have that interaction, it becomes quite difficult. But what I also do want to say is, in general, with like COVID and postgrad higher education institutions and all, because that's also like my area of research as well. First thing that you also need to remember is, for the next couple of years, at least, fieldwork is going to be a difficult thing to do. So when you're planning your research proposal, planning that, take that into account. I had to change mine completely because I can't travel for a lot of my fieldwork. So be aware of that. And the other one is, if you're applying for international universities, funding is going to reduce because we are moving into a global recession, means there will be less funding available, which means like funding is going to be quite competitive. So be aware of those factors at the back of your mind when you're planning like the next 5 years, because when we get out of a pandemic, it's not that everything is going to go back to normal. we're going to move into an economic recession, and then that's going to take years to come out. Like, I think the World Bank released their projections for next year, and it's only China that is projected to have like a point something increase. All the
Minoli,
other
let
countries,
me disturb. We'll come back to that
yeah.
the next 5-year plan, and how we are going to do that, how we're going to address that issue in the next question. So let me, so since you came up with that point, yes, ma'am.
Sahita, small thing to be added there. I think when we speak of the pandemic situation, I totally agree with Dr. Asanka and Minoli. And at the same time, one positive thinking that all of us should also have is that we have a lot of opportunities out there, and we have access to those opportunities out there. Because I think Minoli would agree that University of Oxford, Cambridge, Stanford, all these places provide a lot of free courses. Actually, they started providing free courses as soon as the crisis hit the world in March 2020. So aware about these things. So grab those opportunities. It's all a matter of just clicking on the World Wide Web out there and researching a little bit about it. You will find amazing opportunities just free of charge. And at the same time, back in the days, Minoli, we had to travel for all of these IEEE conferences.
I was about to say
yes,
conference.
Absolutely. Network physically. So personally, I've got a brilliant experience traveling around the countries, and I generally take 3 to 4 days leave, and I try to enjoy the country. I think that's very, very important. But on the other hand, like Dr. Asanka said, it's not possible now. But on the other hand, we also save a lot of money. We save a lot of time. So let's take it positively. And yet we can still continue with our daily work and also take part in the conferences, because IEEE conferences are all going online now, and you still have the opportunity to do your research, do your publication, and also present your research online. Now, back in the days, Minoli, we had a situation where if you do not present, your research is not going to be published by IEEE. If you can't afford to come to that country, your research is not going to be published by IEEE. So now it's not the case. Now things are different because of the pandemic situation. So embrace these opportunities. Know that these opportunities are there, and you will have to embrace it and make the most out of it.
And
Back
also
to you,
there are
Sahita.
like lots of like panels, like international panels, podcast conferences, a lot of things that we like as third world people did not have access to, or like financially we couldn't go, visa was not possible, and things like that have all shifted online, which
And
means
it's all
you
free.
can if you don't like, time zones don't matter. So there are lots of ways to learn now. Accessibility has sort of shifted, acknowledging the fact that not everywhere in Sri Lanka has the coverage, and not everyone is able to access the internet or any of these resources, but it's far better than what it was like, say, this time last year.
And Minoli, you are not the only person who face, and all the people who started masters and PhD nowadays facing the same situation. Therefore, we have to take that matter into account also. We have to use certain techniques, strategies to make it advantage your masters and PhD project, and use skills and opportunities, as Dr. Buddhima mentioned.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, so that's been like even this is a very good example of the world becoming a global society. Like this is also a direct impact of COVID. Like otherwise, like we would not get such an audience on such a platform getting into this discussion. Next step would rather taken into effect in physically. Well, so before we go to the Q&A session, I would like to direct the last question to Minoli. Well, since we have talked a lot on postgraduate studies, and then like it, as you said, it consumes, and it's a investment, right? Really a great investment in time and money. Like you have to invest a lot, that you're emotionally, physically, mentally, even socially, as Dr. Bulathwatta said, it has a social economic impact on your postgraduate studies, and especially into girls. So that's a big thing, and your dream come true, like when you get the masters in a renowned organization, a university, that's a dream come true. So I would like to know, like, what is your opinion of the trend that's going to happen in 5 years time? Like if someone is going to start their postgraduate studies in 5 years time, what are the trends that they will have to face and they will have to experience in your field?
Yeah, so this is definitely like personal opinion. And I'll like make the caveat that my current area that I'm working on is higher education, and internationalization of higher education is what I'm working on. So like Dr. Subasinghe rightly said, the 10 criteria of WEF was something that I think it was also quite interesting to note, because a lot of things that they talk about, essential resilience, a lot of these are, I'm going to borrow Dr. Subasinghe's word, like essential skills. And these aren't really what, say, the quote unquote market that we think about in Sri Lanka right now focus on. We are more focused on, in Sri Lanka, again, I'm making the caveat, this is a very personal opinion, we are focused more on almost producing like robots, or essentially labor force, whereas a lot of these jobs in this area that we seem to focus on have already moved away. Like the world is moving away from it. So by the time we get to that point, those jobs and those skills would be of no value. And that's something that we need to focus on a lot, because the moment you talk, like a lot of the essential skills that Dr. Subasinghe talked about are transferable skills. It doesn't matter what field or area you work in. Research skills, self-learning, active learning, critical thinking, analytics, strategizing, they are universally applicable. And that's where you need to focus on. So in terms of actual like fields, interdisciplinary studies has become the biggest thing, and I don't see that changing. It's not necessarily like niche anymore. So like even say I work technically with like an English and English literature background working in comparative education, might also focus on digital humanities. That is essentially computer science, humanities, social sciences, pedagogies, a lot of it coming together. So the thing is, it's very interdisciplinary, which means there are more opportunities for everyone, because you can do a whole lot of things. In terms of specific trends, there is quite a big movement and an essential movement towards environment and climate change, which will only increase in the next 5 years. So whether you're doing economics, environmental economics, you're doing education, environmental education, like environment and sustainability has become a core component of most fields that you work in. So like basically, I would say, like I said before, with the pandemic, we're also looking at reduced field work, reduced funding, but also more opportunities, more ways to actually engage with audiences, engage with groups, engage with our research. So interdisciplinary studies is basically is the way to focus on, and try to make sure that whatever the area that you choose to study in is, of course, you're passionate about it, but that you develop skills that are transferable. If you are if you become like quite proficient in research, say, you can learn a lot of things by reading. You can listen to people, you can listen to people giving talks, read their papers. There are lots of academics who do blogs now, which are very accessible in terms of language. There are lots of ways to learn, but try not to limit yourself to this one very narrow area, because we don't know what is going to be obsolete in the next 5 years. And that also is where I would say, I personally dislike the term 21st century skills, because by the time the universities have figured out 21st century skills, the world has moved on. We're looking at a program that will take 2 years to deliver something that was decided 3 years ago. So I personally don't agree with 21st century skills, the term. I like Dr. Subasinghe's term of essential skills. And I think that's where, whatever the field that you choose to study in, focus more on transferability.
Absolutely agree on what Minoli was telling all this while. And adding a little bit to it, I think speaking of transferable skills, try to be that person who is irrepressible at office, be it a pandemic situation, be it a natural disaster, be that irrepressible person at office. I think that's very, very important, because like I told you all, by 2025, new jobs will emerge and the others will be displaced by a shift in the division of labor between the humans and also the machines. Because like I told you, artificial intelligence and robotics are picking up in the world out there. I think Minoli, as a person who is out there in the West, would clearly vouch for the fact that the world is transforming at a rapid rate. And mind you, I'm telling you, in the future, there'll be a situation where we as humans, we would be scared whether we are going to have job security with the rate that the robots are going to take over the work. So we don't want that to happen. Do we want that to happen? No, right? Every day we walk into the office, we don't want to sound like, is this fellow going to replace me in the next 1 year or so? We don't want that to happen. So if that's the case, be that tech savvy person. Now, speaking of the IT industry, I'd like to talk a little bit about is that there's a decreasing demand in jobs like data entry clerks, administrative and executive secretaries, accounting, bookkeeping, payroll clerks, accountants, auditors themselves, assembly, factory workers. I'm talking about 2025 and beyond, right? Business service and administration managers, client information, and I think customer service workers are already replaced, especially in places like Dialogue in Sri Lanka. You can call the hotline and see whether there's a person who is going to answer your call. No. Yeah, so already replaced. Even in Sri Lanka, general and operation managers would all be replaced, and there would be a growing demand in the areas of data analysts, scientists in the different areas. I think I totally agree with Minoli. The sustainable development goals, the SDGs, will become a hallmark that we will be looking at, the world will be looking at in the next 10 years or so. By 2030, the world has to have a vision to achieve those goals, or we would not have a world to live in. We would not have a home to live in, my dear students. So it's wherever you work out there, you'll be driving an SDG in your company. So know about it, research about it, because it will be all combined together. Like Minoli said, environmental connection will be there with whatever the jobs, because after all, we need to live in the first place, right? And at the same time, artificial intelligence, machine learning specialists, big data analysts, big data specialists, process automation specialists, so digital transformation specialists in whatever the areas, whatever the field it is, information security analysts and specialists, right? So Internet of Things specialists, IoT is taking over the world. So these are certain areas that has a growing job demand in the future, whatever the field, as in the management field or the IT field or even the arts field that you're looking at, you will have to embrace these areas to move forward in life, because there is a decreasing job demand and an increasing job demand in different other areas. Back to you, Sahita.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Buddhima. Well, yes.
I also have something to add. For instance, that nowadays we have to consider not as a difficult time. We have to think it as a time that we need to strengthen out our technological capacities. Absolutely. And everything. For instance, imagine maybe 6 months or 7 months back, thinking about doing lectures in maybe synchronous manner, kind of quite challenge for many of the lecturers in the universities. But nowadays, all are doing more or less the synchronous mode lectures and everything. Therefore, we are really aware about the technological advancement and the technological competencies now, and it can be really orientation period for all of us to adapt to the 21st century companies, the people, and therefore we have to work with maybe synchronically with kind of artificial intelligence matters. Therefore, this is kind of time period for all of us to orient to that particular futuristic time that we are really waiting.
That was insightful. Yes. So we are moving to unranging the rate of change have like drastically increased than ever in history. So we are in a J-shaped curvature where the technology is increasing, and from iPhones to SpaceX to Borean and now to Neuralink. We don't know when Neuralink will replace our minds, our cortex, the brain cortex. Well, and Amazon like going to, and then Elon Musk are going to put up 42,000 spaceships around the globe. So things are changing, and we have to human potential, human emotions, and human thinking mindset also should cope up with the rate of change, as we have already mentioned. So we have traveled a voyage of expertise for these 60 minutes, 60 to 120 minutes. So now so much of questions are flooding in. I see my host sending me questions, but as the time permits, let's try to give quick answers for all viewers to do justice to their presence here. Well, the first question I would like to direct it to Dr. Bulathwatta. So this question is about doing 2 degrees, where while you are doing a main degree, Like, what is your opinion about balancing 2 degrees apart from the main degree? If we are like doing another degree apart, so how do you, like, mentally, what is the cognitive effect? Like, how can you put your mind into to balance? I think this is more of a psychological question, and we can have a quick answer for it. Yeah. Doctor, I think you are muted. Yeah. Doctor, I think you are muted.
Yes, yeah, it's kind of quite challenge for a particular person, but what the point is, if the degree that the simultaneously doing with the particular degree, which would relate to that particular degree, it would be not a serious problem. But the thing is the efficiency level of the 2 products that he might get, like he might do in kind of, maybe suppose that he's doing kind of computer related degree, then meanwhile he's doing psychology external degree somewhere else, then can we expect kind of particular product, efficient product from that particular person? It is the problem of the productivity of the 2 projects that the person started. But if somebody is doing that, as Dr. Buddhima mentioned, that if somebody is doing a computer, and meanwhile he's doing kind of this degree about artificial intelligence or some kind of human factor modeling or something like that, how then it would be really important. He can get more benefits from that 2 research projects. But if the person is really motivate highly to particular research project, not that much to other research project, he might get passed from that project, but he might not get advantage of that project to the some other project. Literally, he might get kind of qualification at the end. He might get 2 degree or degrees from the different field, but he might not really provide from his knowledge dissemination later on. This is there. Therefore, it's kind of quite difficult problems. There are some kind of ethical parts and more kind of productive problem of the productivity of that project. But I personally will not do that. But if somebody wants to do that 2 degrees at the same times, he should find some degree projects which are a little bit can find particular relationships in each project. But other 2 panelists might have different ideas about it. My personal point is it shouldn't be done. But if somebody is doing 2 degrees, that degree should be a little bit similar each other, because if somebody is doing maybe engineering degree along with some kind of medical, pharmaceutical or something like that, it might not be related to his future career. It should be similar projects, but I would not do personally. But if somebody wants to do, find some kind of similarity and kind of like a helpful, like a content of the degrees that they are doing.
Absolutely agree with Dr. Asanka on that aspect. I think probably you can select one field and do your 2 degrees in 2 different areas. Maybe one in computer science, one in software engineering, one in network engineering, one in software engineering. That's perfectly all right. Exactly. But you're still under computing or information communication technology. So that should be all right. But definitely not you doing an engineering degree and also a medical degree on the other hand. It's not humanly possible sometimes for you to really focus properly on one thing and the other thing at the same time simultaneously. So I've done 2 degrees, one in computer science, one in software engineering. So it's perfectly all right. It blends well, and there are subjects, there are modules that combines the 2 degrees as well. So it's more convenient, right? But otherwise, it could be a tough task. Definitely agreed with that.
Yes, and also I think the other question to ask is, why is it that you want to do 2 degrees? Is it because you're interested in 2 fields, or is it because you think you'll have some sort of a competitive edge if by the end of 4 years you have 2 degrees? If so, how practical is that assumption that you have, considering wherever you want to move into? Just because, so there are lots of students that I taught who did double degrees, and it was usually law and something in social sciences. And there are, of course, instances where it helps. Say if you are like a language or a literature student and you do discourse analysis, really helps with law and vice versa. However, why is it that you want to do it? Is the question that you need to ask.
Agreed, absolutely. Now, in my case, I wanted to pursue an international degree, so I did a computer science degree at Curtin University of Australia, and my bachelor's here in Sri Lanka in software engineering, specializing in information technology. So just like that, ask yourself the question: why do you want to do 2 degrees, and what's the reason, and what are you expecting out of it? Are you expecting a diversified opportunity out there in the industry, different avenues in the industry? If so, yes, of course. Or I would also recommend you to focus on one, do it properly, get your first class, publish your research, and be the best at what you're doing, and your job is guaranteed in the industry, and you will be unshakable.
Yeah, so we are in a mission of creating unshakable graduates. That's why that is the main focus of NextStep 360. Well, so before we move on to the next question in the Q&A series, Q&A segment, I would like to invite all our audience, we have got down your feedback form. You can just, it pops up in the chat box. You can just click on the link and go, please. So be kind to fill it. So I invite everyone to fill the feedback form, which is in the chat box while we are engaged in the Q&A segment, right? So that will be a great help for the organizers in the future ventures. Well, next question is to Minoli. There is a question the audience have given us, what is the advantage of being a teaching assistant during your postgraduate studies? Being a teaching assistant.
Yeah, so I personally think it's a lot of time commitment. It's difficult to manage time. It will be very stressful, but I personally think that helps quite a lot. Because when you're a student, and I mean, as undergraduates, I'm sure you would know, like when you do COOP is also like a way of learning, right? Like you learn a lot more by teaching someone else. And if you can get a TA position, that means your degree is funded because you'll be contributing to the university. You'll have a lot of work to do, a whole lot of work to do, but it will definitely help because you also, at the end of whatever the period of time, have your qualification, but you also have hands-on experience. You've also interacted with people, students from multiple backgrounds, multiple disciplines. You've had conversations, you've interacted. That will definitely help your development of your research, as well as your general career growth. If you have the opportunity, I would say, while it's stressful, definitely useful.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that will be really good opinion to the viewers. Let me move on to the last question that's directed to Dr. Buddhima. Well, there's a question from the audience. Which is more of a general question. I think a panel can answer. What are the opportunities that an undergrad, a graduate, gets after completing their PhD in Sri Lanka? What are the opportunities that the a graduate gets after completing the PhD degree in Sri Lanka? Yeah.
Well, yes, you would definitely be able to apply to become an academic, definitely not industry. Well, like I clearly highlighted at the very beginning, I wanted to select my career path, and I selected academia because I love to be with the students. I love to inspire the students. I love to motivate them. I love to see them grow. So this is exactly why I selected academia over industry. But like I told you earlier, doing a PhD will definitely not matter to the industry. In the industry, what matters is your hands-on experience, the number of years, the level of experience in a particular area or a field, and how well you manage your staffing and so on and so forth. So definitely in terms of academia, you would get the opportunity of becoming a senior lecturer, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, whatnot. And I think Dr. Asanka would also agree. And eventually would be able to become a head of a department, a dean. So these are opportunities that are available out there, and continue doing your research as well. Do not stop your research. And another thing I'd like to also highlight before we conclude, Sahita, I think we'll be talking a lot about research. We'll be talking a lot about dissertations. My humble request to all the undergraduates out there is do not just confine your research to your dissertation or to your research publication. I humbly request you to take it to the level of a final end product. Finish it. That's where you come up with that end product, where you implement something out there in the industry, and you see the beauty of it working out there. That is where you step onto the world of entrepreneurs. Now, on the other hand, I'd also like to highlight that 50% of the startups that were started in Sri Lanka over the past 3 years have just given up on their jobs in 2020. Why did this happen? Because they didn't know how to do digital marketing. They didn't know how to do digital advertising. So they were clueless. So they tried to create a mobile app, which did not also work out at the last minute. So during the pandemic situation, they had to just shut down their entrepreneurship ideas and that seed that they planted. So do not let it happen. Now, this is what I've been constantly telling: engage in technology, engage with technology, embrace technology, and at the same time, do not let your research go a waste, but see the beauty of it being implemented out there in the industry. That's where you become a true professional, and that's where you will be happy, and you would have really found the purpose of your life at the end of the day as a researcher, is what I would like to suggest. So do not give up on those entrepreneurial opportunities out there, because there are enough and more companies in Sri Lanka who are supporting you in funding your entrepreneurship opportunities. University of Peradeniya also has a big a notice board out there in all the different faculties. I've been constantly telling certain students to come and ask me for advice. Now, when I was a PhD student, one thing I do is, my dear students, I always go to PGIS. I take photos. If my train is going to be missed, I take photographs of the notice board, and I go back home, I put it on the computer and I read it out, and I see what opportunities are there. I look and see what are the opportunities available in the university itself and out there in the world, and I try and apply for those opportunities in terms of conferences or maybe some other research work that I can engage in. So the university provides a lot of opportunities, be it University of Peradeniya, be it any other university. But the problem is we don't tend to grab those opportunities. So grab it and make most out of it, and be that person who wins life seeing the end product of what you do. And that's where you find the purpose of your life. Over to you.
Yeah, I need to add something to Dr. Buddhima's opinion. We as Sri Lankan, we have a huge responsibility to use, like in a practical settings, our research component. Most of the times, we have to practice scientist practitioner model always, because we have knowledge factor from our dissertation. We have to apply them into the practical settings to develop our country. Most of the cases in Sri Lanka remain the same as a developing country for a long period of time. Therefore, you can use your research project to make betterment of our future in Sri Lanka, as well as establish some kind of research culture to solve certain social problems in Sri Lanka. It's not about the natural sciences, but social sciences like psychology, sociology. Psychology belongs to between social science and natural sciences, but anyway, other science field, social psychological field, and or many field can provide a lot to the country development. Therefore, I totally agree with what Dr. Buddhima mentioned. We have to change our mindset. We have to find sometimes our own, sometimes job opportunities, researching and everything, and do research and try to find your own way, not to rely upon someone else to give you job opportunities and research activities and many more things can use for you to initiate your own future.
Yeah, so I would just like wrap up and adding to that, because I'm a social scientist. I very proudly, prominently humanities and social sciences person. And definitely, like Dr. Bulathwatta said, you need to look a lot more into, like we do. And the sad part is there's a lot of really good work coming out in Sri Lanka, but it's not necessarily published. You would know of X or Y who did this really amazing project, great, but can you cite it? Can you find it in a publication? Not really. Mm-hmm. So that's what makes it really sad, because we have a lot of potential, we have a lot of talent, but we don't speak the global language, so to speak. We don't put it out there for someone else to, and think of it like Dr. Subasinghe also said, in terms of giving someone else the opportunity to do it practically, to use something. You do a research, yes. You conduct something, you have developed a practice, put it out there so someone else can use it as well. whichever it is, it's natural sciences or social sciences, wherever you come from, like research is paramount, I think. Whether you go to the industry or stay in the academia, regardless, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Minoli. Thank you, Dr. Buddhima, and thank you, Asanka. So that was so amazing to wrap up this session, that we could address the issues regarding postgraduate studies in all perspectives, from a mental, psychological perspective, from the other extreme, from a techno-savvy perspective. Well, we would travel a voyage where we could grab expertise. I would say like several months of studies would have certainly entered your brain cortex at a sudden glimpse of about 2 hours. So we could and Minoli. So I think this was a fruitful session, and it was so amazing, fantastic, even for me as truly, from the sense of the word, I'm an undergraduate. So though I stay here, that was so amazing to speak in front of you. And then like I think the mission or the vision of the Next Step 360 of Rotaract University Peradeniya was fulfilled today by this one. So this is a continuous series. This is one of the academic segments. We have two more segments. And well, before we end up the session and before you leave, I would like to invite everyone, please just hit a click on the link on the chat box, and then it'll direct you to a feedback form. That will be really grateful. So if you can click it, so please give your feedback. And when so at last but not least, I would like to thank, I know many people, Dr. Buddhima, Dr. Bulathwatta, and Ms. Minoli. Well, I said it at the last moment, right? Well, we're so busy in the tight schedules, and then in these times of pandemic, just coming for this session, sitting with us and speaking and answering and be inspiring, actually. So we got prominent figures. So I would like to thank Dr. Asanka Bulathwatta from the Department of Psychology, University of Peradeniya, for being with us today, sharing your insights and inspiring and motivating our young undergraduates. Dr. Buddhima being a symbolic and iconic figure, not only in Sri Lanka, but the whole South Asia, being the youngest PhD holder. So it was so amazing to have you here on the session, madam. And well, Minoli, so she was like friendly, engaging in stuff, and passing our time zone. You're away from us still. You dedicated your time to cross the boundaries of time and to be with us. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining. And then I would like to invite everybody, stay tuned with Next Step 360. We are continuing our mission to inspire passionate undergraduates to become fulfilled and sustainable citizens. Well, I use it with essential skills, as we mentioned. So we came up with new terminology. So well, so then stay tuned with us. Next step. Right. Thank you. Have a pleasant evening. Okay.
Thank you for having us. Good luck,
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you very much for having us. It always feels like home to be a part of University of Peradeniya, and I would have loved to be physically present, but unfortunately, yes, a pandemic is blocking it all. But definitely in the future, would love to be there in person, to be back with family, and to be back at home. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, and nice to meet you. And also, it's thought-provoking session for three of us, also as well as the audience. I think it would be really nice opportunity for many people.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye.
And I invite the audience to stay tuned with Next Step 360. Thank you very much.